You're a
Yeah,
believer. You are.
maybe I am. Did I just convert? Man of the year, man of the year, man of the year.
Welcome to the number one friendship podcast in the country. I'm Matt Ritter.
I'm Aaron Karo.
Karo, I've always felt we have a little bit of a bridge between us.
I'm already laughing. I know because you got a real mischievous look on your face.
Yeah. I've always been like, I wish Karo had a little more faith.
Oh.
Yeah, he's like a little cynic. You never take my temple invites. So today I decided there's no way out. I decided, our friendship, we have a great friendship. And I think a lot of friendships, people don't really talk about religion or faith. And I think it's important. It's an important part of everybody's life on some level, to some degree.
Yeah.
Even ye of little faith over here. I said to myself, what if I bring one of the wisest people that I know, one of the wisest people in LA or maybe the world, my rabbi, the rabbi of one of the biggest temples, one of the oldest temples in LA, Wilshire Temple, very famous.
Yeah.
And a spiritual leader, a guy who's a successful author, has written about grief and just relationships. Just felt like he would have a good handle on friendship, and he does.
You want to hear a funny story?
Sure.
So, you know that I'm Jewish, but I'm definitely more secular.
Yeah.
And I have my moments where I'm just like, I hate all the trappings. So I officiated your wedding.
Yeah.
It's a Jewish wedding. Ketubah, glass break, all that stuff. And you were wearing a yarmulke, the head covering, and you gave me a yarmulke because I was officiating you. And I go, I'm not wearing this.
Oh,
and
yeah.
And I put it in my pocket.
Yeah. The disrespect.
But you know
Should
what?
have been angrier.
But you know what? There's no video proof.
No, damn it. Don't even get me riled
I
up
know.
about that videographer from hell. Anyway, so we have Rabbi Stephen Leder. We did an incredible interview covering his own friendships or friendship issues, you could say, which I thought was super fascinating. So let's just get into it.
Let's do it.
Rabbi Leder, thank you so much for joining us.
It's great to be with you, both of you guys.
First off, I just don't even know what to call you. Like, is it what you're not in temple? Like, outside of temple, do people just call you Rabbi or Steve? Or I don't want to disrespect the Rabbi.
There's no disrespect possible, and people are kind of weird. Some people, it's always Rabbi Leder. Sometimes it's Rabbi Steve. Sometimes it's Steve. Usually in podcasts, it starts out Rabbi Steve Leder, and then it ends up Steve by the time we're halfway through. So I think we should just cut to the chase and go with Steve.
All right, Steve. So then I got to ask, like, what is your friend circle? Because in my mind, it could be that you have a friend circle like everybody else, or it could just be a bunch of rabbis smoking cigars and, pondering the universe.
It is definitely not that. I have never, since my first day of rabbinical school, I have not spent a lot of time hanging out with other rabbis. It's just not my crew. And even professionally, my role is so different than most rabbis that, we have problems, but my problems and their problems are not the same problems. And I've been to one rabbinical convention in 37 years. And that's just me. I'm not so much aloof as I am incredibly busy, and but I've never sought much in the way of friendship or collegiality from other rabbis. Partly because I work with 5 or 6 other rabbis and 3 cantors, so I have my own kind of built-in peer group. But also, it's sort of the same thing in my marriage. I didn't want to marry a female version of myself, so I don't hang with a lot of rabbis. And I really have very few, if any, close friends. Now, this is complicated, and we're going to get into my sorry-ass life, but you asked. When you have a role like mine that transcends office hours or location, and pretty much everyone I know, since I've been in my congregation for 37 years, almost all of my relationships overlap with my role as a rabbi. Even my, what I would say closest friends, they still relate to me also as their rabbi. And I relate to them as a member of my congregation. So it's a tricky thing to ask about my inner friendship circle. It's really my wife and my kids, because pretty much no one else can get over the role and just treat me like a regular person.
That's really interesting because
What about the friends you had before you became a rabbi?
Well, there aren't many, and even they now relate to the rabbi part of the persona. It's just inescapable, and it's kind of a weird. When you're a rabbi or any clergy person, you're not a person. You are a symbolic exemplar. And you play a role in people's minds. They project onto you, and you play a role in people's minds that, frankly, they need you and want you to play. And I've learned to be gracious about that instead of bitter and resentful about it. But it does create separation in a way between me and whoever that other person is, when you're not just a person but also a symbol of something, an exemplar. You can't really have regular normal relationships.
It's funny because we were going to come at it from the opposite. We actually thought, and maybe a lot of people think this way, we were like, oh, I wonder if there's a rabbi congregant sort of boundary that you set. We kind of were assuming that you would be the one who wouldn't want to cross that line with your congregants. And now I'm wondering if maybe it's just sort of this like thing where everybody kind of thinks that, hey, they can't really be friends with the rabbi too.
I think it's a little of both. Honestly, it's more on I'm more on the receiving side of that weirdness, but there are clearly things I don't say or do because of my role that might be limiting friendships. But honestly, I think that men's friendships, well, let me back up. The first article I ever wrote that I got paid for was for Playboy magazine, and it was a column that the magazine had called Man Track. It was actually an excellent column about men and men's issues. And I wrote for them because they heard about this group I started at Wilshire Boulevard Temple called 100 Jewish Men. I started a men's group, and I took 100 guys in the first year, 100 the second, 100 the third. And we dealt with really serious men's issues. And one of the things that became clear to me was that men don't have these whole juicy, organic, full friendships like women. Men have what I call task-specific friendships. There's your poker buddies. There's your work buddy. There's your podcast buddy. There's your tennis buddy. But those roles are very rigidly defined, and they almost never transcend the role to become more whole and organic. You know, my wife, when the kids were little, she'd go to the park, she'd come home with a new best friend. And they knew everything. They knew about their hemorrhoids. They knew about everything. And, you know, they would call each other about what they were going to do. Then they'd do it. Then they call each other to talk about what they did. And men aren't really programmed that way. And even our friendships, if you think about it, okay, well, we go to the game. Well, think about how you're sitting with your friend at a game. It's side by side. You're not looking at each other. And these are subtle but important differences. So I wrote this article called God's Loneliest Creatures. And it had to do with what I had learned about men through this 100 Jewish Men program. And it still holds. You know, you ask most guys, who's your best friend? And they'll give you the name of two guys who live in a different city that they see once a year. And those are their best friends.
So I just want to talk a little bit about what you've learned from the men's group and working with men. Like me and Matt, we're trying to get men to be more intentional about their friendships, to realize the importance of friendship. You know, you talk a lot about living a meaningful life. Like, how can we how can we change how men have been socialized to get them to realize how important these friendships are?
Well, I think we need an artificial device or construct like the one I created that ran for 15 years very successfully. We need structure to do that. And we also need to avoid falling into the kinds of things men tend to think about and talk about when they're together. The old idea of a men's group was bowling or poker or whatever, and we'll talk about sports and we'll talk about, women and, whatever. But we actually need to be taught how to have these larger, juicier, more organic friendships, because we're not socialized that way. We're socialized to go it alone. For most of us, one of the interesting things about this 100 Jewish Men group was that there were 3 generations in the group. There were 25-year-olds, 50-year-olds, and 80-year-olds. So you had 3 generations of men in the room. And this was very powerful for the younger men, because for most younger men, the only older men in their lives are their father or their boss. And you can't have a real conversation with your father or your boss. And so it was an opportunity to get to know older men who were, for lack of a better word, neutral, safe. And it was also an opportunity for older men who are befuddled by their millennial children to ask questions of younger men who are not their sons. And it was a very fruitful, powerful thing, but it did require a kind of artificial construct to make it happen. And I'm okay with that.
I wanted to talk about, you wrote a book about grief, about losing your dad. I lost my dad last year, and it really affected me, like a lot more than I ever thought it would, I suppose. And it's like an ongoing thing. But I also realized, and we talk about this a lot on the pod, it's made me more vulnerable. It made me realize that I needed my friends and I wasn't okay. And so how do you think maybe sort of you could potentially use tragedy and grief as a springboard to improve your friendships?
Well, it's the only springboard, first of all. Pain is the only teacher. There is no other teacher. Disruption is the only generative thing in life. One of my favorite sayings is by Marshall McLuhan, who said, "I don't know who discovered water, but it wasn't the fish." A fish is born in water, lives in water, dies in water, and therefore the fish is the one schmuck that doesn't know it's in water, right? When does a fish discover water?
When they're out of
When it's jerked out of the water, wriggling at the end of a hook, gasping and flailing for oxygen. That's when a fish discovers water. That's when a fish grows up. That's when a fish learns gratitude. So it's these disruptive punctures, the things that puncture our equilibrium. Those are the things that enable us to grow. And they are, without exception, painful. And I'm not telling you the pain is worth the growth. I'm just telling you, don't let it be worthless. Like, you'd have your dad back in a minute, Matt, right? And give up everything you've learned in the aftermath of his death. But you don't have that opportunity. You can't have a better past. You can only use the past to have a better future and a more beautiful future. So I think the point is, I say this all the time, if you have to go through hell, don't come out empty-handed. That's the point. And you're not coming out empty-handed. And it is only pain that cracks us open. In this weird sort of way. Can I get sort of like Jewy on you for a second?
Absolutely.
Please.
We're going to get into Jew stuff right after this. That was a good transition.
All right. Okay. So there's this very interesting line in the Bible that says God puts God's words upon our hearts. And the sages, they ask this very interesting question, like, why upon our hearts and not in our hearts? If God has the power to put words upon our hearts, why doesn't God just put those words in our hearts? And the answer they give is just so powerful and profound and beautiful. What they say is God places God's words upon our hearts. And it isn't until our hearts are broken that the words can enter. Which to me is this beautiful duality, which essentially posits that in a way, we're more whole when we're broken. There's a dimension to life that can be experienced only through that prism of pain. I mean, what does success really teach us? Nothing. So I agree with you, Matt, that it's not just a springboard, it's the only springboard to another level of enlightenment or gratitude or spirituality. You fill in the word.
We wanted to talk about being Jewish and we were talking before we started on the pod that we're from Long Island. We lived in New York before that. Now we live in LA. Basically existing in a Jewish bubble that doesn't really exist in the quote unquote real world outside of here. And I guess my question is, in terms of relationships and friendships, are we perpetuating sort of a sheltered existence like the fish in the water? And is that healthy? I don't know. Sometimes I think should I not just be living in this world that I've been inhabiting my whole life?
I personally think that being proud of who and what you are and celebrating differences is important. I don't know, what I'm about to tell you is not true of my kids, but it's true of many of their friends. Somehow they were raised by my generation of Jewish parents to believe that differences are bad. We're all one. Everything's okay. Everything's cool. Everybody's the same. Well, everybody is important and of equal importance, but everyone is not the same. What a horrible world that would be. So I prefer a mosaic to a melting pot, I prefer a tossed, pasta to a smoothie. I like ingredients that stand up for themselves and speak for themselves and make the world a more interesting place. And I like people who are proud of their differences. Look, I grew up in Minnesota in a suburb, first ring of suburbs outside of Minneapolis called St. Louis Park. It was affectionately referred to as St. Jewish Park because despite the fact that we were in the middle of very white, very Lutheran and Swedish Norwegian Minnesota, our little suburb, my high school, public high school, was probably 70% Jewish. I walked to the school bus as a little kid with 100 Jewish kids just on my street. So I grew up in that bubble and I like it. And what's wrong with loving your tribe? I don't see the problem in that. I see, and by the way, in terms of creating these friendships, you asked how do we help men? What I would like to find is some modern version of the minyan. Do you know that traditional Jews every morning and every afternoon hung out with the same 9, 10, 11, 12, 15 guys every day? They knew when one of them was missing. They knew when they were sick. They knew when their kid was getting married. They knew everything. And they were a team.
I have a Jew question I've been dying to ask a rabbi.
I'm your man.
Okay. So in Passover, why didn't God just kill Pharaoh and eliminate the middleman? He's letting little Egyptian babies die. It just seems like a whole waste of time.
Okay. So let's start with the fact that the Bible is not a book of facts. It's a book of truths. Right? I'll give you a simple example. Is it a fact that Noah got all two male and female of every species on the planet, put them on a boat kept him alive while it poured for 40 days and 40 nights, and then the water had to recede and the earth regenerated and then the earth was repopulated. No, that's not a fact. But is it true that we are responsible for the creatures on this planet? All of them? Yes. So we often dismiss the Bible because, well, that's not how God didn't create, the world wasn't created in 6 days. That's bullshit. That's not a fact. No, it's not a fact. It's a truth. So, we use this word myth as if it's synonymous with a lie. A myth is not a lie. A myth is a way of describing a truth, a way of describing something about the human experience. So now let's go to your question. Why was this myth constructed in that way? Well, I think the reason it didn't go right to just killing Pharaoh is that it's also a lesson about what happens when a leader doesn't care about the suffering of his or her own people. When did Pharaoh care? Only the 10th plague, which was the death of the firstborn, because that affected Pharaoh directly. Before that, he didn't give a shit. And that's ultimately, those people end up drowning in their own indifference. That's where Putin's headed. That's where Hitler went. That's where Mussolini went. It's a myth meant to teach us something about the difference between leading for the sake of your people or leading for your own narcissism.
I'm going to use all this without attribution at the next Seder to win the day.
Yeah, well, you won't be the first or the last. So,
I did have another sort of religion and friendship question, which is, so I'm a pretty secular Jew, as I'm sure you could infer, and so when I meet someone, if I meet a woman, or if I meet a guy, and they're believers, they're church going, they're synagogue going, I'm like, oh, I'm very quick to discount. I'm like, I can't even fucking deal with this right now. Like, what do you, how can you teach us to be more accepting of the believers when, I don't know, I'm just kind of like, it seems like a little bit of nonsense.
So let's play a game. It's not a game at all, but you're not the first person to say, like, I'm a secular Jew or I'm Jewish, but I don't believe in God. Okay. So you're a secular Jew, and I'm guessing that has to do with something with God as well. Like, you're not really down with that, right? I don't believe in God. Okay.
Right.
Fine. Aaron, what do you believe in?
I believe in being a good person, kindness, and being there for your buddies.
Okay. The human connection. That's a very deep spiritual thought. That's a deep spiritual underpinning. And for many, like when I say God, I mean everything you just said. What does it mean in the Bible when it says man is created in the image of God? It means that we can show up for each other. We can comfort each other. We can take care of each other. We can love each other. We can be kind. What I find is that when people tell me, well, I'm a spiritual person, or I'm a secular Jew, but I don't believe in God, and I ask what they do believe in, they always give me a very deep theological response. So my hunch is that what you're really uncomfortable with is not the idea of God, your idea of God. What you are uncomfortable with, which most Jews are, is that when we talk about God in English, using English, we feel like we sound like evangelical Christians with whom we do not agree, because they have monopolized God talk in America. So it makes it's lumping ourselves with a bunch of people we don't agree with when we use the word in English. So look, I don't care if you call this an espresso cup or a mug or a container or a vessel. I don't care what words you use. We're talking about the same thing. And we really have, therefore, most of us, not a theological objection. There's not a person on the planet who thinks he or she made the sunrise this morning. We all know there's something bigger than us at work. That's obvious. So what we have really is not a theological problem, but a psycholinguistic problem. You're a believer. Yeah. You are.
Maybe I am. Did I just convert?
Yeah, maybe. Well, Karo, by the way, went to Israel twice. I find it funny because Karo, a very non-believer, but then he's been to Israel twice in the past couple of years, and I feel like we're roping him in. We're pulling him closer to God.
Peoplehood is your thing, right? By the way, it's the human connection. Martin Buber, okay, who wrote a book called I and Thou. His whole Jewish theological point of view is that when you and I, Aaron, are having a real relationship, like we're really seeing the humanity in the other, when I'm treating you like a thou and not an it, we are at one and the same time having a connection with the divine. That we can have, that through these horizontal connections, we're also having a vertical connection. By the way, what do you think the cross is a symbol of? It's the combining of the vertical and the horizontal, the earthly and the heavenly. What do you think a Jewish star symbolizes? One triangle pointing down, overlaid on one pointing up. It's this coming together of the worldly and the divine. And that's what you feel in peoplehood. It's
literally
very
didn't know either
spiritually.
I had no idea about either of those. I had no idea of what either of those symbols meant. That's amazing. I want to before we go, I want to go back to the beginning because I felt a tinge of sadness. I don't want to say I feel sad for you because you have a great life, but just from our perspective of the podcast, I felt a bit of sadness in you saying that you don't have any real friendships. So I want to ask or maybe challenge you because we actually do a fun thing on the pod where we kind of do friend setups, right? So Rabbi Leder, who's now retiring, so now he has this barrier that he's built up or that other people have built up. That's gone now. That's down, right? So now we just have Steve Leder. What is Steve Leder's? You're still a rabbi. You're never going to not be a rabbi, but what is Steve Leder? I feel like you're going to want a friend. So what does that friendship look like for you now that the temple is, not going to be the sort of, just the only thing that, kind of guides all of your relationships in this world. And maybe you'll be able to sort of overcome that, large practical obstacle that was in the way.
I don't know. I don't know what that looks like. But I look forward to finding out. And I am, when I really fully retire, my side hustle will become my main hustle. And my side hustle, frankly, is not in a Jewish context at all. I write books, I do a lot of media and news stuff, and I write a lot of articles and social media. And most of it is not with Jews. So that world, that media world, authors, it's a whole world of new and interesting people that I really look forward to being more and more a part of because it's interesting and it's outside my wheelhouse. I mean, the writer's strike has caused a pause in this, but I'm a creative consultant for a Netflix show, and I'm the oldest person in the writer's room by 20 or 25 years. And it's great. It's so interesting to me. So I'm looking forward to being more and more a part of that outer world without it for a moment being anything other than who I am. I'm a very proud and open and thoroughly Jewish Jew. But I also, it's just refreshing to be making connections and creating relationships outside of that world. There's a big world out there full of lots of interesting, creative, smart people.
So we're going to be trying to staff.
We'll get you comfortable.
Leder. That's what's going to happen, Karo. We're going to be trying to staff on Rabbi Leder's show. That's what's happening.
Matt, do you have anything else?
You want to be my friends when I retire?
Yes, okay. Yes.
Okay, good.
We never realize it now, but our friend group probably could use a rabbi.
But that's not the role I want to play, right?
Yeah, I know,
That's
I know.
true.
Well, no,
I just
wise
wanna be a
man,
dude.
you know, wise men. You want. He just wants to be the party animal. Fine, okay. We just need a. He just wants to be the party guy.
Well, you know something?
No.
You guys don't know this about me, but
Yeah.
I grew up in Minnesota, and I didn't come from this LA scene. I've learned how to, navigate it pretty well. But I have a little cabin in Joshua Tree in the middle of nowhere and a pickup truck, and I'm very happy there. I would just like to shed the role that comes with my life. I'd like to shed that role sometimes. Like, people there not only don't know who I am, they don't even know what I am. And I find that incredibly refreshing. So as long as you guys don't treat me like the rabbi, we can be friends.
I was actually just thinking he's got a cabin in Joshua Tree, so that works for me.
Now you want to be my friend.
Exactly. Yeah.
I think I could get very familiar, as Matt knows, very fast. So the rabbi thing would be out the window in a heartbeat. And also, you're not my rabbi, so.
Good to know. I'm not your rabbi? What's wrong with you?
Listen, Rabbi Leder, you don't know this, but I've invited him to Passover, Passover? No, what is it? Temple services. 25 years in a row? And 25 years in a row he says no. But he said he still appreciates the invite. I still invite him every year.
That's right.
You should come this year because it's my last as the senior rabbi, so I'm bringing the high heat, bro.
Karo, you're not
No,
going
I
to
don't
want
want
to
to ever think of you as a rabbi.
Karo, this is like
Okay.
Billy Joel. This is like Billy Joel's last concert at the Garden. This is like Billy Joel's last concert at the Garden.
I do want to say one thing to you in all seriousness, because we're kind of joking around. That article that I wrote all those years ago called God's Loneliest Creatures, I think it's still true of most men. And what you guys are doing is really, really important. Keep it up.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm converted.
You're in.
I'm a convert.
You're in.
I'm a Jew now.
You're in. What did we learn today? Seriously.
Well, I thought it was just interesting the way he thinks about religion.
Mm-hmm.
Also, just let's talk about rabbis in general, being a rabbi. Do you think it's kind of like being a podcaster in that, like, there's pretty much at this point no question about friendship we haven't gotten?
Yeah.
Like, you can't stump him.
No, you can't. You tried.
I tried.
Failed miserably.
I failed miserably.
Not only that, I actually think not only did you fail, but he also immediately proved his mettle.
Yeah. I mean,
you were like, oh, he's the real deal.
Right. I mean, he has been doing it for 40 years.
I know. But that was, first of all, what I learned, I love that whole part about myth. Myth isn't a lie. Myth is just a way of presenting the truth. Like that whole thing that he just talked about with, we know they didn't go on Noah's Ark, like two of each animals, but we do know that humans are responsible for all creatures in this world.
And to your point, and to his point, if you're friends with someone from a different religion or someone without religion, it's all the same. You're all, I think he
called you right out when he said, what are your values?
Right.
And did that hit you in any way of like, oh yeah, like maybe these people who I consider super religious really just have a different way of expressing their values, but the values are pretty similar? Or do you not agree with that?
I do, and I think it was very interesting, but like, I don't know, does it seem a little, what's the word? Facile?
Yeah, because
facile?
Look
that up. F-A-C-I-L-E.
I don't think you're suddenly now going to go out and become friends with super religious people.
Right.
Because I think part of like our friend group and like the way you form friends is that you have similar language and shorthand about things.
Right.
And so even though you may have some core values with a lot of different people, the reason you choose your sort of inner tribe is that you are into, you know, whatever, the same movies or whatever, even like more, some things that are surface. Cause like, hopefully on some level, we all kind of have the same, quote unquote, like core values of family and kindness, et cetera.
Can we talk about how he was like, I don't have any friends?
Man, it's gotta be tough.
Lonely at the top.
Lonely.
But he was sort of saying, I am in such a lofty position that it's my responsibility. I've given up friends.
Right.
And I was kind of like, oh, it's not, you need friends because you're a better rabbi, you'd be a better president, better celebrity.
Right.
You need buddies.
Right. I know.
Nobody
So,
doesn't need friends.
He almost reminded me of Kobe Bryant. You know,
Oh,
Kobe
yeah.
had no friends.
Yeah, because he's
You
don't
know?
want to be
Right.
distracted.
Like a lot of these guys, these high performers or whatever you want to call it, the people that are top of their craft. And like part of me sometimes is like, okay, maybe there is something to that.
Maybe I
you know?
should jettison
all-
Karo.
Yeah, like I could just jettison Karo. Like
Yeah.
this anchor around my neck.
Yeah.
This 135
Albatross.
pound, 5'3" boulder.
Oh, God. I wish those were my numbers. I wish. Yeah.
No, I know, but I do think all of us, right, when we see these people that are, you know, at the top of the peak, the pinnacle of their profession, and they're just friendless, and you're like, what is that?
Yeah.
I just think his definition of friends is different. He's setting a very high bar for what like a true,
Yeah.
you know, like loyal compadre, like what we have. He doesn't have what we have,
Yeah.
you know?
We really should. Is he moving?
No,
Okay. Should we become friends with him?
absolutely.
Where does he fit in our
Yeah,
entourage?
I know, because he was like, I don't want to be the rabbi of the group.
That's
I was
true.
like, that's kind of like your role. Like, you're not going to be the wise one. Like, are you telling me we're not going to get to go to you for counsel?
So
Then,
he wants to
like, what is your role, dude?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Like, you're not going to be the Vegas guy, are you?
What does he
Oh,
want?
this
Like-
guy can
yeah.
get this guy can get poppers.
Yeah. What a weird. It is funny. A rabbi, he's like, listen.
Don't treat me like a
Yeah,
rabbi. What do you want
yeah.
me to treat you like?
Yeah.
What do you want me to treat you like?
Oh God, I think he would like you and he would hate me because I would push it too far. I'd be like, listen, you want to be a rabbi? Like,
No, but he seems pretty cool, you know? Also, I mean, we have to talk about the elephant in the room. I mean, don't we kind of hate him now?
because.
Because he got staffed on a Netflix show.
Oh yeah. Oh my God. Oh my God. So he's working on a Netflix show. I don't have a Netflix show.
Oh God! Only in LA, guys. If you want to know what LA is like, your rabbi gets staffed before you
Yeah, your rabbi.
on a major Netflix show, and you're killed to get into that room.
Forgot about that.
Forgot about that?
Yeah,
I've been ruining that
Yeah.
ever since.
I love that.
Listen, thank you, Rabbi. I hope one day when you have a Netflix show, you can hire us.
Yeah, and let's shout to all the clergy out there.
Yeah, listen, I would actually like to hear from clergy. Do you agree? If we have any clergy fans, do you share that assessment that is hard to be friends with your community or just have friends in general? Because he chose not to be friends with other rabbis. I'm wondering if clergy are friends with other clergy.
Yeah, we want to hear from nuns. We want to hear from ministers, rabbis, imams.
Yeah,
Imams.
imams.
Iman is the model.
Iman married David Bowie.
I do want to hear from.
I would love to hear from
Is it
Iman.
Is it Iman?
Iman.
Are you sure?
I want to hear from imams and Iman.
Theo, you gonna look
Yeah,
that
you
up?
can look that up.
IMAN.
Yeah.
Pronunciation. All he does is pronunciation now.
Yeah, mostly pronunciation with Thelonious.
This is his moment.
So for the Iman Iman, it's Iman.
Okay, you were
Curveball, Iman.
Iman, not Iman.
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 You were closer. I'm gonna
And
give
she
you
was married to David Bowie?
that's true. That's
That's
very
true.
famous. Yeah.
And then additionally, we have Fossil.
No, I don't think Theo knows how to read the little
No,
pronunciation
F-A-C-
marks.
Fossil.
I-
Fossil.
F-A-C-I-L-E.
Yeah.
Facile.
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 Yeah, he's wrong. He doesn't know.
Jesus
Aaron's got
Christ.
it. He's got it.
So now we have to correct the
We have to correct
corrections.
the correction.
Sweet Jesus. All right, that's our show, guys. Thank you so much. Remember, be good to yourself, be good to your friends.
Love you, buddy.